very excited today to introduce Dr. Shashi Prasad to the Sexy Aging podcast. Now, I'm going to introduce Dr. Shashi very soon, but I want to let the audience know that there has been a bit of a journey for me in evolving the topic of conversation today. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background around that. And I'm married to a Māori man in New Zealand, and the Māori are the Indigenous people of New Zealand. And I've had the opportunity to interview many experts in the field of longevity, health, and menopause. Those topics are fascinating to me. And as a perimenopausal woman, of course, I want to know everything that I can about this unique topic of life and this stage of life. But then I look around me and I go, okay, so lots of women like me are able to tap into this information. We have, education and information to help us deal with our symptoms and lifestyle. But I look at my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law, and I look at the Māori woman around me, and I sort of feel like, hang on a second, how are they accessing their information on menopause? And actually, what is the conversation? Like, how do people in different cultures converse about menopause? And Dr. Shashi, I am so grateful that you have honoured me with your presence today to come on the podcast, and we're going to be talking and tapping into one of the very first cultural conversations I've had on menopause. So thank you very much. You're a GP and advanced menopause specialist based in the UK and a lifestyle medicine physician. My first question for you, tell us about yourself. I'm going to shut down. It's your turn now.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for giving me this platform where I can talk about the very important topic of menopause. And then again, one of the niche areas of menopause and ethnic minority women, how things are different. So as you know, I've been a GP for many years now, and I have worked in various parts of London. So I have worked in East London, which is mainly, South Asian, Southeast Asian population. And then I worked in areas which is mainly Afro-Caribbean population. And now currently I'm working in an area which is mainly Caucasian affluent. So I've worked in different parts of London and have had an experience of different cultures there. While working in my current job, that's when I realized, women coming out seeking help for menopause, and I realized there's such a big gap in the service. So even even in the service provision for like we are talking about ethnic minority, but even in areas which are affluent, which are Caucasian, service in National Health Service (NHS) is really lacking. And that's when I thought that, wait a minute, I have to update myself, upskill myself. I cannot carry on working and providing a good service to these women with the current knowledge I have. And that's kind of pushed me, or you can say encouraged me. It was a very gradual evolution for me. Okay, I need to learn this a bit more. And then one thing led to another, and eventually I trained to become a menopause specialist. And even after becoming a menopause specialist, I have now noted a stark difference in the women who are coming out to seek help.
Okay.
Most of the women who come to seek help are Caucasian women, affluent women. So like you said, you're thinking about the Maori population and the women there, and think, who is helping them? And I'm thinking, are Indian women not going through menopause? Are Afro-Caribbean women, do they not have symptoms? So when I see the women who present with, they're quite symptomatic, struggling, so like what's happening with the rest of the women? And that's when, kind of, again, that stimulated me, gave me the impetus that, I need to do some work in this area. It's not that these women are not having symptoms, just the conversation is not there really. They are not coming forward to seek help. And then in that case, we have to reach out, spread the information about menopause, about midlife health, wellness. It's not just about stopping your periods. There's a huge seismic change in a woman's body at the time of menopause transition, hormonal changes, biological changes, there's fertility changes, there's significant metabolic changes. So all the women, in spite of whatever their culture, background, ethnicity is, they need to know about these changes. They need to be aware and be prepared for it and know how to seek help.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, there's so much of what you've just said there that I need to unpack. So I've got quite a few questions. So Yeah, here
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah.
Your
Go on.
ethnic background, do you want to share a little bit about that and your experience with understanding the story of reproduction as you grow up? Because I think we all, if we step back and we often speak about our puberty and the
Mm-hmm.
conversations that we may or may not have had with our mothers and how
Mm.
we learnt about the reproductive cycle and periods and everything. And now we speak fairly freely about that. I mean, I have a 17-year-old and she'll
Mm-hmm.
just tell us, yo, period's coming, watch out, guys. I mean, that's how she talks. The whole house
Oh.
knows about it. So I mean, I think that's really cool and really,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
it's a thing that happens to a woman, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. If anything, it's a superpower. But I think at the
Mhm.
bookend of that, the menopause conversation really kind of got left out because I'm a little bit Gen X angry about that. not knowing and then going into it with all the symptoms and going, what the heck's going on? So how about you and your ethnic background? Well, you want to share a little bit about that as well?
So I'm from Indian origin. I was born and brought up mainly in India. So I moved to UK only when I was 25. So most of my upbringing, my learning, education has been there. There's been no conversation at all about menopause. I've never heard anybody talk about menopause. I didn't even know what was menopause really. Earlier, so puberty, yes, there's still, the talks are there. The moms would sit down, or some female family members would sit down with their daughters and talk about periods. But again, with the puberty, the hormonal change, the psychological changes which are associated, again, not very, not much talking about really. So
No.
you just ride it through. Yes, they must change about another, the major hormonal event in the woman's life is the pregnancy. Yes, there's a lot of conversation about that. Pregnancy is a big thing in Indian cultures. Is in many parts of India, it's considered as a woman's identity, to be able to get pregnant, have children. And that's it really. After that, the conversation fizzles out.
Yeah.
Who cares about menopause? Who cares you're not having periods anymore? Unless once you've had the children, it's fine. So this one big problem is that even in women who have had the children and they grew, about early menopause and premature menopause,
Yeah.
when you go through menopause when they're less than 40, more, the incidence is more common in Indian women. And once they have had the children, they're least bothered that they've gone through the menopause, really, even if they're less than 40. But it has such a huge health implications. The awareness
Yes.
is not there. So
Mm.
if I remember any family gathering, women sitting down talking, no menopause conversation. Even with friends, no menopause conversation. I was a GP trainee, so working, training to become a GP, so doctor. When my mother went through menopause, I didn't realize what was going on. And I was like, she would burst out crying, and she would be hot all the time. There's significant emotional dysregulation my mom went through. And I was like, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with you, mom? I've not done anything. Why are you crying? So that's,
Yeah.
even though, and that's, even though I was a doctor as a GP trainee, I was not realizing that it is because of such emotional, the emotional dysregulation is because of the hormones. Now I look back and say, like, oh gosh, I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have helped her. But that's the same story in the Asian women, Southeast Asian women, Indian women. Very, very common, whether it's Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi. Very common situation, really.
Yeah. What I'm really curious to know is, as a GP, as a menopause specialist, and you're seeing, like you've mentioned, a lot of Caucasian women will come to you. They're probably aware that they're going through perimenopause. They come to you with maybe a list of symptoms. I think this is one of the recommendations for women to
Mm-hmm.
approach, their GP or menopause specialist about their symptoms and say, can you tick the list for me and say, yes, you're in perimenopause, and here's the things that you can do to help with your menopause management. So I think we accept that's starting to happen and ramp up. And I think this has been around 4 or 5 years now. I can see that is happening. Do you get many South Asian or Asian or any other races come to you around their menopause symptoms, and they're coming to you and they're going, I know this is perimenopause, can you confirm it? Is that happening to you now?
I knew you're going to ask me that, so I've been thinking. I don't have a data, so so I was thinking, how many of my patients are actually ethnic minority or Southeast Asian, South Asian women? I'd probably give pull out a number for about 5%, really. I won't think
Out
that
of,
there are any.
what's the percentage on that? Like roundabout?
So yeah, so 5%. So out of 100 women, probably,
oh,
if I'm lucky, I would have 5,
but,
South Asian women, really. Yeah.
wow.
And yeah. So
And
the numbers are
why do you
really,
think that
really.
is? Do you think it's because the conversation's not being had, or is it because they're not having menopause symptoms? That's the thing I want to know,
They can't not be having menopause symptoms. Every woman is going through menopause, really. Yes, 70% of the women will probably have bearable symptoms. So symptoms is something which is manageable with lifestyle, and only about 20 to 30% when the symptoms are really, really bad, and that they need to go and speak to the doctor. So I've been trying to understand this, explore this. So I've been trying to speak to friends and family, like, what is it? What stops you from seeking the doctor, seeking help from the doctor? So few things have come up, which I think, one is that the general knowledge about menopause and HRT is significantly missing. So they don't know. Often, they would go through it like, oh, what's happening, and it would be just accepted and gone through in their stride, unless they are really, really poorly. So they would just go through it like it's a natural process. This cultural belief that menopause is a natural process, if they know what it is, really. So for them, it's basically, periods stopping, you can't have children, maybe hot flushes. So the knowledge about other symptoms, the anxiety, psychological symptoms, insomnia, it's not there. So women think that there's something wrong for them. They might go and see the doctor for being upset or depressed or anxious. So if the doctor is not able to tease out that these symptoms are actually because of menopause, there is no menopause conversation there. So
Yeah.
the women don't realize that these symptoms are not because of hormones and not psychological. So they might go and see the doctor, but they would go as present as an anxiety. They would be present as depression if they are symptomatic. But otherwise, they would think, okay, if it's menopause, it's a natural process. What's the big deal about it? Every woman goes through it, really. So there's significant lack in knowledge about understanding the symptoms. There's significant lack of knowledge how your body changes, the hormonal changes, the biological changes, the metabolic changes. The metabolic syndrome is very common in
Yes.
South Asian population. Very high risk of diabetes, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, cholesterol, blood pressure. And this risk significantly increases with menopause transition. Women are not aware of this, really. So
Yeah.
it becomes, then they are not coming out to seek help. They are not looking after themselves. So they are not approaching menopause with the knowledge that this is menopause, this is what's happening this is what may happen. I need to start looking after myself. Then there is a significant lack in resources. Obviously, a lot of South Asian women actually speak and read English, but there's no resources there. All the resources that's available, in UK, obviously it's in English. Even if I've tried to look for resources in Hindi language or some Indian languages, there is not there. Maybe you'll come across 2 or 3 very generic articles. The women are not able to identify with that information. There's no motivation, or maybe they are not able to understand the language. So again, they're unprepared, like you mentioned. Okay, women come with a list. Fantastic, absolutely lovely. But is there a list in any other language?
Yeah,
Well,
true.
there isn't, really.
There isn't, yeah.
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 So I think that's another.
I actually have seen
Sorry.
on an app, you're probably familiar with the Balance app that Dr.
Yeah.
Louise Newsom. So they've actually just translated quite a few of their resources.
Quite a lot of them, yes.
Yeah, different into languages. I think I saw Mandarin, Hindi, Spanish. Those were the 3 key ones that I saw, which is fantastic, right? Because I think this is the conversation we're having. Is like, because of cultural inequity around this particular topic has caused the issue of trying to play catch up around how much do we know about menopause. Super interesting.
Exactly. So we really need to have that information out there in various languages, conversations in various languages, representations, like this podcast you are arranging, which is a fantastic thing. That this, like you mentioned, a lot of women don't identify with menopause because most of the conversations which is happening is among Caucasian women. The leaders in the conversation are Caucasian. The participants are Caucasian. The other ethnic minority women are not able to identify with it and may think as a white woman's privilege, really, like you were mentioning that word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with women that are coming to you for, well, those, that 5%, you'll remember them because, you know, it's like a rare occasion,
Yes.
right? So what kind of symptoms are they presenting? I'm curious because I do think I've read a little bit of, I've actually started studying around the differences in menopause for African American, for Asian and South Asian women, and we are presenting with different symptoms.
Mhm.
So, what are the ones that have been the top of the list for your clients?
I think top of the list across the board, one of the common ones is the emotional
Uh,
aspect of it.
yeah, you know
It's
what?
a big biggie.
Every doctor I've interviewed that's a menopause specialist has said number one is anxiety. Yeah,
Exactly. Anxiety, depression, irritability, loss of motivation, loss of confidence, very common presentation. And I have noted that across the board, really. So women, when they would come, they can say, yeah, yeah, there are women who would come with the hot flushes and night sweats. For example, you know, women with from Afro-Caribbean origin, they have very terrible, they might have much more severe vasomotor symptoms, flushes and sweats. And mental health issues, again, is a big one for them. Often they can have quite a lot of anxiety, clinical depression. So if again a population which are very underrepresented, and again there's lots of work going on, fantastic people getting involved in this space, but still women are very reluctant to talk about it and come out and seek help. But these common ones, South Asian women, again, you know, mental health issues, anxiety, insomnia is again a big one. So
mm,
they would lack of sleep have a huge impact on a woman's life. They say, see, I can put up with the hot flushes and night sweats, I cannot function without sleeping, and I don't know what's happening to me, why I'm so anxious and depressed.
yeah. Would
Yeah.
they even contemplate mentioning libido or vaginal dryness?
Yeah.
Would they even speak
Ah,
of that? Because I mean,
no.
this is a quite a recent conversation that's even come up for me.
Mm-hmm.
Only in the last sort of 6 months of interviews is that we're actually starting to talk about that as one of the top symptoms as well. Vaginal dryness, loss in libido. Yeah, would that even be something that they would be comfortable speaking of, or
There is a significant, you know, you can say taboo or hesitation to talk about sexual health of the vaginas and vaginal dryness, bladder symptoms. It's very, very important for clinicians actually to ask this question. Women will talk about it you know, if you ask them with hesitation. But if you're not going to ask them, I don't think the conversation will come up. And women talking to each other about these things, I think is probably non-existent.
yeah, that's such a shame, don't you think? And I think that's why you and I are obviously quite passionate about having this conversation. You know,
Absolutely.
just to help women. I still get a little bit like rah, when I realize that no one is talking about this, or we are talking about it now. That's why we're here, and yeah, I just super appreciate your perspective on the cultural group that that you represent, South Asia. I can tell you from living in Asia for 20 years, I lived in Malaysia, so there are three key cultures there. It's Malay, Muslim Malay, Chinese, and Indian.
Hmm.
So Hindi, Indian, and so there are three cultures, and nobody, and I have lots of friends across all those cultures.
Hmm.
Nobody spoke to me about menopause. No one. So it's going to be challenging, and I think we've got a few steps to get ahead to try and open up that conversation and really help women identify that it is a natural stage of life. There is lots of things you can do to support yourself, but the most important thing I think now from all the conversations that I'm having with everyone is to see it as a moment of reflection, to really consider what the rest of your health is going to look like in the future, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
yeah, so
Yeah. So, you know, the average age of menopause can be from 45 to 55. So some women go earlier, so you know, even in the early 40s. And now, you know, the life expectancy is increasing. So, you know, average age of life expectancy for women is in the 80s, really. So you're literally spending one third of your life, 30 years plus of your life post menopause.
yes.
A very different experience, a very different hormonal and health environment compared to your premenopausal status. So women need to be aware of it. They really need to look after themselves. Women in, like late 40s, early 50s, they are at the peak of their careers. I think that is another reason why this conversation is taking so much of traction, is because of menopause in workplace. And also in Indian women, I've noted this is one space where women are beginning to talk about it. So they are working, they are in the top of their careers, they are noticing that the menopausal symptoms is affecting their life, their performance, and they want to get help, and they are talking more about it, which is fantastic. The conversation needs to start somewhere, really. But even these women, I noticed the acceptance for HRT for treatment is very low. They first want to do lifestyle. They want to do
Yeah.
nutrition, exercise, very open to it. You tell me, Shashi, what can I do to look after myself? And I'll tell them. And if they're very symptomatic, but I think you probably should consider a child. No, 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 no.
Oh,
That thing is still there, really. But
yeah.
I think it's all about creating a conversation, talking about safety of HRT. We have got so good products now. It's so safe. And if you have a conversation with a good specialist, get the right products. They're very safe, really, and
Yeah.
it make a huge impact on the woman's life, work life, family life, their own physical health, their sexual health. Yeah.
Everything, all the things.
Yeah, everything, really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, I really appreciate this conversation, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm looking forward to speaking to other cultural experts that can give me a bit more of a perspective across, the different cultures and countries. So thank you for being the first out of the gate, Dr. Prasad. Much appreciated you.
Thank you, Tracy. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to come on this podcast with you. Thank you.
You.